Okay, everybody's favorite, drugs. Now, I filled the awkward silence of me talking with some clips of me training out in California. I just want to preface everything from what I'm saying here. My diet was perfect. I trained to failure every time I went in, and I did cardio every single morning. So, if you think that these peptides and these steroids and everything else will work for you, if you don't have all those nailed down, they're not going to. But I'm just going to share how I got from the starting point to the finishing point before I left for California in 5.5 weeks. All right, what you see in the before photo is me at 292. It's a post-workout photo. It is coming off a pretty long bulk. I believe it was the beginning of March till mid-June. I bulked as hard as I possibly could. I went from about 270 to 292 in that time span. And you can see I'm carrying some extra body fat. And it was good at first. I was almost putting on a pound a day. But then it leveled off and kind of got that tired, don't want to move, heavy breathing feeling at the end of the day. And then you could start to see body fat pile on, which is fine, because, we have the necessary tools to take it off. But I knew I was vacationing in California towards the end of July, and I just didn't want to be on the couch falling asleep. And I wanted to be able to walk around. I wanted to be able to enjoy my trip. The trip to go to Venice was kind of unplanned, and finding that spot to pose in was actually kind of unplanned too. I kind of just walked in and I'm like, oh shit, this is where iconic photos of Dexter Jackson were taken. And so I just kind of went in that mirror. So you're seeing different lighting, obviously, but it's post-workout to post-workout. It is 292 in the first photo to 277 in the second photo. That was done in 5.5 weeks, and a considerable amount of body fat was taken off. I didn't do anything to my cycle. My cycle is 300 mgs a test every other day and 200 mgs of mast E every other day. So that I didn't touch that. What I did play around with was the mitochondrial peptides. And those were kind of blowing me away. And I want to share what I did, what I took, and how they worked for me. So in the tail end of the bulk, it was just hard to wake up every morning. I'll admit I was slacking on my steps and slacking on my cardio, and that was definitely the reason why the body fat was piling on. But you kind of get in those dog days of off season and you're like, all right, I'm gonna trade 30 minutes of sleep for 30 minutes of cardio here because I'm just dead, not recovering. It's weird how when your body fat gets super high and then when it gets super low, the recovery's off at both extremes. But when you're kind of in that, middle ground, people always say that when they're like 8 weeks out, 6-8 weeks out, they feel tremendous because everything's recovering, everything is absorbing nutrient-wise, your insulin sensitivity's back. So that's kind of where I landed in the second pick. But anyway, so I started every morning with 1 milligram of MOT-C, and I took that pre-cardio, and that was one thing I could feel kick in. Like I could definitely feel the energy. I could feel it kind of when I got there and when I was ready to hit the treadmill, and the sweating started pretty much immediately, which was cool. I mean, anything that can give you a kind of mental like aspect going into cardio that like when you're usually dreading it, like shit, this is gonna work. Like I'm gonna put my all into this and it's actually gonna work and I'm gonna see effects from it like every day. Like that's just makes cardio more enjoyable. So what I would do is I would, get home and eat meals 1, 2, and 3. And then pre-workout, I was doing 600 mgs of injectable L-carnitine, which another thing that I could feel kick in, almost breaking out in a sweat before I started my workout, which was great. It's just that mental aspect. Like, I know I'm gonna burn fat during this, so I'm gonna put more into my sets. And there are some people that get that mental edge from like a halo testing or a trend, and it makes them want to train harder. That can kind of creep up into the unsafe territory to where you're using those type of drugs to get that edge. They're pretty toxic, but using L-carnitine or using a MOD-C, I don't see any negative effects with that. But what I also was doing was with 4 of my meals per day, 20 mgs of SLU PP332. Yes, 20 milligrams. If you're familiar with SLU, it's typically sold by the 250 microgram pill. But the human equivalent testing dose is 4 mgs per kilogram of body weight. So if you're, 100 kilograms, you're 220 pounds, 4 mgs per kilogram is like 800 mgs. So I don't understand why they're selling it at the 250 microgram cap. I know people are still seeing results out of that low of a dose, but definitely I would see if you can get your hands on a higher dose SLU, because it really works. It's magic. You could even get a lot out of just doing the 21 per day, but I was doing it with 4 by meals at 80 mgs, and it was pretty crazy. You can kind of feel your insulin sensitivity with the meals. So like with 2 of my meals, I do Humalog pre and post workout, and that kind of takes care of the insulin sensitivity there. I'm doing it exogenously, but with my other 4, I'm doing it with the SLU. I have L-carnitine, I have MOD-C, and I was also testing my blood sugar to ensure that I was under 90 when I would go into my next meal. And that was something I wasn't doing in the off season. And when I first started deciding that I wanted to start losing some body fat and see how quickly I could do it, I was testing my blood sugar coming off having a kind of high body fat, and I was eating, and 2 hours later sometimes my blood sugar was still like 130. So admittedly, I was doing some Humalog with a couple of those meals as well to get it back down into the 90s, and I was retesting it before I ate just to make sure that it was creeping back down so that meal would absorb. Because there's really no sense eating a meal if it's still elevated, especially a meal with carbs, because you're taking your body what's already not burning fat because it still has enough blood sugar, but you're just piling on a meal. Like everything that we eat is used for energy, and if the meal can't absorb because the blood sugar is too high, it's just going for storage. And it's the reason why we put on excess body fat in the off season, because it's more than we need and it's going for storage. So that was actually something new. All these things are new for me. And I will definitely be carrying this into my next prep, because I feel like I lost a lot of body fat here in a pretty short amount of time. And it was a lot easier, and there was no T3 involved, there was no Clen involved, there was no Tren involved. There wasn't a change in cycle. So I think these mitochondrial peptides are real game changers for safety. You know, as long as you're doing your steps and you start eating into a deficit, you're still training to failure. That was another thing too. Like, I didn't have to take my food down to where my lifts were suffering. Obviously, I wasn't doing a prep, and I just did a 5.5 week recomp. But yeah, it seems so much safer just optimizing the mitochondria. And I'm really happy that these new peptides are kind of hit the map. It's gonna hopefully increase the longevity of these bodybuilders that are, you know, playing the size game like myself, perpetually being over 270. It's just not the healthiest thing in the world, and especially if we're cranking our heart rates up with Clen or cranking our thyroids with T3. It's just, you know, enlarging our hearts. It's just not the safest avenue in the world. And carrying that into a prep where, you know, necessary things are needed at the end for getting in shape, it should help, I think, people live longer in the sport, and that's, you know, that's gonna be a lot better, because we've lost too many.